The Radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Monday, June 15th, the day after President Trump's birthday. And, of course, President Trump, on his birthday, got to electronically sign the Memorandum of Understanding, which is going to lead to the greatest deal in all of human history. This is going to bring peace to the Middle East after 3,000 years of warfare. Finally, we have peace in the Middle East. And it was very, very important to Trump to sign this thing on his birthday. Yesterday, he was kind of flipping out when it looked like it might not get signed. The official signing ceremony, because, you know, the Iranian barbarians, the murdering, the murderous dictators of Iran deserve a formal, a formal ceremony with their American counterparts. They'll get to shake hands. They'll get to be buddy-buddy. They'll get to be legitimized in the eyes of the entire world. Will happen on Friday. I mean, just having the ceremony, a formal signing ceremony, which I think Trump is going to participate in because he's in Europe this week, has to rank as one of the most disgusting phenomena. These are the people with the blood of 40,000 of their own people in their hands. These are the people who've been lying to the Americans and to the world about their nuclear program for decades. These are the people that have been funding terrorism, the number one funder of terrorism for the last 47 years. And these are the people that are going to have a nice handshake and a pat on the back and a congratulations and a raising a glass of champagne with the Americans. I mean, it takes what is a awful memorandum of understanding and I guess deal, and makes it so much worse and so much more disgusting. And it really is a symbol. It's a symbol of the complete capitulation and surrender of the Americans and the elevation, sanction of the Iranians. I just can't wait for those TV images to come out. I mean, it reminds me of Donald Trump hugging and playing best friends with the brutal dictator of North Korea, who also has the blood of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of his own people in his hands. And yet Donald Trump treated him as his equal and was friendly. This is how you could tell, I mean, from his first term, how just unbelievably disgusting this man is, and his foreign policy is completely bankrupt. So anyway, there is a deal. We don't know the details. So they signed it yesterday. A bunch of administration officials are going on TV talking about it. But on the American side, nobody's actually published the text. It's, to put it mildly, a little strange, a little bewildering. If this is such a great deal, if this is the deal of the century and it's so much in America's self-interest, why isn't the text public? Why aren't they making hay of it and putting it out there so we can all see what our brilliant negotiators actually achieved? It's nowhere to be seen. So we speculate, and the Iranians are publishing all kinds of stuff, but it's hard to tell whether the Iranians are publishing the right stuff. If it was a DocuSign, if this was signed electronically, it was saved in a PDF, just, a secure PDF, just send us the secure PDF, put it up there, send it to the media. But no, so we don't have all the details, granted that. But we know from the interviews of people like J.D. Vance and others, the framework, the basic framework, although, again, they seem to present it with a spin that the Iranians don't accept, and we don't have a deal, so we don't know. We actually don't know. Have you noticed I think a lot of people have noticed this, but have you noticed that our foreign, Secretary of State responsible for foreign affairs, for dealing with foreign countries like Iran, is AWOL? I didn't see him all weekend. I haven't seen him on the talk shows today explaining this deal to the American people. He's disappeared. He's gone. I mean, J.D. Vance is basically Secretary of State right now. He's the one going out there and doing all the work. Interesting. And if Marco Rubio had real balls, if Marco Rubio was a real man, he'd quit. He'd quit. He won't. I mean, no way is that happening. But he could quit and say, this is a disastrous deal for the United States, which it is. We'll get into that. I wasn't involved in negotiations. J.D. Vance was. And I can't stay Secretary of State with this deal in place and have any kind of integrity. Remember all the things that he said during this war. Anyway, let's get into the deal. So what does the deal say as far as we can tell, right? Immediate multi-front ceasefire. Importantly and crucially, this includes Lebanon. Even though Israel has objected, but it includes Lebanon. It involves the lifting of the U.S. naval blockade on Iranian ports in exchange for Iran opening the Straits of Hormuz. More recently, it looked like the U.S. was opening first, and the Straits of Hormuz would have to go through a period of clearing the mines, and Iran is not going to open the Straits of Hormuz until Friday, until after the official ceremony. So a little ambiguity, which has been consistent for months now, about what opening the Straits of Hormuz means to the Iranians. Iran is demanding initial payment of $12 billion before the Straits is open. And it seems like Trump is going to agree to that. And again, we don't know the details of that because Trump administration has not publicized the memorandum. Trump claims the opening will be toll-free. But Iranian officials have previously indicated they still will impose fees. They won't be tolls, there'll be fees. And they will retain regulatory control maybe with the Omanis, maybe just Iran. And this was a major goal of the Iran, and it seems like the Americans have assented. The Straits of Hormuz are now officially controlled by the Iranians. This seems to be something that the United States has assented to, has agreed to, something that didn't exist before. The deal also stipulates that within 60 days of the scheduled June 19th signing in Geneva, the two nations will begin follow-on talks, addressing the termination of all U.S. sanctions, the nuclear issue, and Iran's reconstruction, economic reconstruction. When asked today about a $300 billion fund to help Iran rebuild, J.D. Vance did not deny it. Basically said, yeah, if they fulfill their requirements in terms of the nuclear issue and there's a deal, and yeah, we could imagine a reconstruction fund, $300 billion. Reconstruction. Hard to believe. So we're going to give the bloodthirsty, criminal, evil, a genocidal regime in Tehran $300 billion in exchange. They'll verifiably dismantle their nuclear program. It's not even clear what that actually means. The Iranians are claiming they're never going to agree to that. They'll only agree to downgrading all the refined uranium to lower grades, but as soon as they're not giving up on centrifuges, they're not giving up on any of that. So that's yet to be negotiated. The U.S. is saying no centrifuges, no U.S. program, but even there's some ambiguity, and again, the U.S. seems desperate for a deal. My guess is that before the war started, if the U.S. had offered the Iranians $300 billion to have a nuclear deal, the Iranians would have signed. Why was the war? Why would we engage in a war? Keep that at the back of your mind. That is the key question. Why was this war even necessary? Clearly, the United States is coming out of this war in a worse situation than they were going into the war. Iran, and I can't believe I'm saying this, because from a military perspective, this is so one-sided, but from a war perspective, and the total package perspective, Iran won this. Unequivocally, no question about it. Don't believe anybody who says out there otherwise. It's just not true. Iran won this. It's getting more and giving up less than it would have had to do if it signed a deal before the war. The framework appears to diverge significantly from earlier U.S. positions. Remember, Trump once insisted on the destruction of all Iranian nuclear facilities and zero uranium enrichment. He told the New York Times that Iran would now be permitted low-level enrichment. That is, zero enrichment is not the position going into the 60-day negotiation. So already, as with all the negotiations Trump always goes into, he is the worst deal maker I've ever seen in my life. I mean, literally, I can't think of a worse deal maker I've ever encountered or read about or seen in my entire life than Donald Trump. He goes into the deal already giving up everything. He did this with Russia and Ukraine, and he's doing it with Iran. Instead of going in and saying, zero enrichment, dismantle the entire nuclear program, and then I guess maybe compromising, he's going in saying, yeah, I'm not going to insist on that. So he's already publicly stating that they will allow centrifuges and they will allow minimal enrichment. If you have low-level enrichment, you can have high-level enrichment. Once you have the centrifuges, nothing to stop you from enriching to higher levels. Nothing, nada, zero. And we know this is exactly the pattern. This is exactly what Iran does. They cheat. The IGC-affiliated Tasmin news agency, for its part, framed the deal as, quote, tactical pause in the war rather than a final settlement. It warned that many more concessions would be needed of the United States for any future agreement, and that Iran's experience with the U.S. bad faith makes one unlikely. I mean, I can only hope that somehow it all falls apart, but I've been hoping that for weeks now. It hasn't happened. Trump, there's no depths to which Trump is not willing to go in order to grovel before evil. There's just none. He did it with Putin. He did it with the brutal dictator of North Korea. He did it with Xi. And now he's outdoing himself by doing it with the Iranians. I just wonder what some of the objectors, fans of Donald Trump think right now of this deal. I'm curious. I mean, Tehran's giving almost nothing, right? Against, the U.S. is demanding a 20-year enrichment ban, which is meaningless because, I mean, enrichment to what level? They say only a 5-year pause. Why 20 years? Why not eternal? The Iranians are maneuvering to get their frozen assets early in the process, which will take away some of the U.S.'s leverage. Trump has said that if the negotiations fail, he'll go back to war, but nobody believes that. He's said that so many times and under-delivered on every single one of them that nobody takes him seriously. Nobody believes his threats. I mean, why would anybody? He said it over and over again for the last 68 days. Iran gets its ports unblocked, sanctions relief, de facto recognition of its sovereignty over the Straits of Hormuz in exchange for complying with the ceasefire, which was supposed to open the Straits of Hormuz. So he's finally maybe complying with the ceasefire announced 68 days ago. Ceasing random acts of violence, believe that when I see it. And then there'll be negotiations over the nuclear, which the United States has already moved away from its position from just a few days ago. In other words, this is total surrender. This is total surrender. The U.S. literally has received nothing it didn't have before. Remember, before the war, Straits of Hormuz were open. Before the war, all that enriched uranium was buried under rubble. Still is. Before the war, there were no hostilities. So what did the U.S. gain from this? What was achieved? And of course, this places Israel in an impossible situation. Netanyahu and the Israeli government has hitched itself to the Trump administration. Trump is driving off a cliff, and Netanyahu and Israel is going to drop from that cliff with the Trump administration. I mean, even a few weeks ago, the assumption was that Trump would help Netanyahu in his political career, and that Trump was going to receive the Israel Prize, and he's going to come to Israel before the election and do a victory lap around Gaza and Iran and endorse Bibi. And now Bibi goes into the election with his main partner having surrendered completely, and Israel in this kind of limbo of nobody knowing where and what it should do. We will see. He has said already that on the one hand, Israel needs to push back against the Americans, but it can't push back so much that the ties get disconnected. How much can he actually push back? If Trump unequivocally demands that Israel retreat, leave Lebanon completely, 100%. And the risk is that if they don't do that, Trump stops all weapon sales to Israel. What choice would Israel have? Bibi in the past has found ways to go around presidents, go to Congress, go to others, but there's nobody to talk to at Congress. Democrats have become, over the last few years, massively anti-Israel. And the right is not going to stand up against Trump. And if the Democrats win the House and maybe the Senate, all bets are off. All bets are off. So, it's unclear what's going to happen in Lebanon. Supposedly, the MOU means ceasefire on all fronts, including Lebanon. But ceasefires in the past have only, according to Trump's mind, only applied to the good guys, right? Iran could bomb the UAE. That was okay. Iran could bomb ships in the Straits of Hormuz. And according to Trump, that was okay. Nobody really got hurt, so that's okay. Hezbollah could send missiles into Israel, drones into Israel, which was a clear breach of the ceasefire. Israel was not allowed to respond. I mean, there was a huge crisis this weekend. Hezbollah sent missiles into Israel, clear violation of the agreement. Israel bombed Beirut, which was a red line that the Iranians drew. Trump woke up Sunday morning, his birthday morning, and freaked out. Lost it completely by all reports. this was going to stop the signing thing, and Iran was going to retaliate. And he called up Iran, and he basically had the Qataris go to Iran and basically give the Iranians everything they wanted to make sure there was a deal that day and they would not fire on Israel. So what happens when Hezbollah fires a rocket, as they did this morning, into Israel? And according to the tit for tat kind of theory, Israel's supposed to bomb Beirut again. Well, it won't, because Trump has said no, and there's a ceasefire. But what happens when Hezbollah continues to break the ceasefire? And by the way, Israel, regularly knocks down Hezbollah's missiles, so nobody gets hurt, which is good, right? No, it's not good. According to Trump, if nobody got hurt, you don't have a right to retaliate. So, we will see. Is Hezbollah going to attack and break the ceasefire? Will it do so with Iran's knowledge? Will it undermine Iran? I don't know. Can Israel respond if it happens? Can Israel bomb Beirut if Hezbollah attacks Israel? If Israel does strike, what happens when Trump turns on it? Iran might do it, might encourage Hezbollah to do it just to test the waters and see what's going on. I mean, clearly it's already tested the waters and seen how weak Trump is and how willing he is to abandon his ally. There's a Kissinger quote from back in the day. Kissinger said once, "It may be dangerous to be America's enemy, but to be America's friend is fatal." Trump has made that very real right now for Israel. And this is the tragedy. And this is where, if you look short-term, medium-term out, Israel has no friends anymore. Europe has turned its back on Israel completely. And in America, the Democratic Party has turned anti-Israel, and a significant portion of the Republican Party has turned to anti-Israel. And the portion that's pro-Israel has no power. Has no power. So, I don't know what happens here. I don't know how this progresses, but nothing good is going to happen. Elections in Israel will be a mess, but even more importantly, I don't think America recovers ever from this. This is the biggest geopolitical mistake, catastrophe for Americans since the Vietnam War. I mean, this is much bigger than Biden's retreat out of Afghanistan, even though you won't have the visuals of the American helicopters taking off of Saigon or the airplanes taking off from Kandahar. But it's worse. It's much worse, much more. I mean, the United States' credibility is gone. Iran comes out stronger, comes out the one that withstood the pressure, comes out the one that's more reliable. The Gulf states are pivoting towards Iran as we speak. I mean, Trump can go, what does that mean? Netanyahu, by the way, is out there saying, with an agreement or without an agreement, Iran will not have nuclear weapons, not today, not tomorrow. As long as I am Prime Minister of Israel, it will not happen. He might not be Prime Minister of Israel for very long. He also says that Israel will remain in its security zones in Gaza, in Lebanon, and in Syria for as long as necessary to protect our country. You know, what happens if Trump demands? You know, we are going to see. So yeah, this war was a disaster. All my early optimism was for naught. TDS. You really think this is TDS, right? Are you reading the news? Are you reading what Trump has just done? And I have TDS. I gave Trump the benefit of the doubt during the war. I thought the war was, we're going to do something important here. We're going to win, and there was going to be regime change. I was positive about the outcome. And now it's turned into one's worst nightmare. And you can pretend it isn't. And I have TDS? Me? It's just bizarre to me how people can't think. Edward, sorry if that's insulting, but that is the reality. Can't think independently. Because it doesn't take me explaining this deal to you to see how just goddamn awful it is. So I think Trump says he probably won't be signing it. He might be, might not be. But J.D. Vance will definitely be there because this is J.D.'s deal, right? This is clearly J.D. Vance's deal. Anyway, I couldn't even imagine this being as bad as it is. I really couldn't. And you thought the Obama deal was bad? And what all the money Obama gave the Iranians was bad? This is so much worse. This is so much worse. By the way, it turns out that about a month ago, the U.S. secretly approved a financial and maritime arrangement between Qatar and Iran, under which billions of dollars were paid to Tehran in exchange for free passage of Qatari tankers and ships through the Straits of Hormuz. The secret U.S. approval, which the sources said was granted about a month ago, dovetailed with Doha's interest in opening a direct channel of communication with Tehran, which they've had forever, which began to tighten after the ceasefire. Qatar, fearing a renewed Iranian attack on its facilities after one of its gas installations was attacked during the war, sought to buy security on the quiet. Some of the payments were disguised as fees for tankers passing through Hormuz, and a broad credit line of up to $1 billion was also opened for the purchase of goods through Qatar. And Trump knew about this, and he let it happen. Qatar is best friends, so he let it happen. Here's a statement that I think is absolutely true. A senior Israeli official said, quote, "If we had known the war would end this way in terms of the political outcome, it is not certain it would have been worth going to it." Oh, it would have not been worth going to it. Whatever was achieved is being undone. Because this deal, I have to tell you, the deal as it appears right now is worse than what I thought it was going to be a week ago. The $300 billion has entered the equation, for example. So, in spite of everything, that Israel achieved in killing the supreme leader, in taking out a whole level of IRGC leadership, in destroying parts of the Iranian industry, it's not worth it. Given all this, I mean, they're going to get the money to rebuild everything. Remember, and it's not that hard to find the quotes, but that early on in the deal, when people were asking, what are the war aims? What are America's war aims? The United States, Trump basically went out and he said on a number of different occasions, he said, we aim to dismantle basically Iranians' capability to build ballistic missiles. We aim to get the Iranians to stop funding its proxies like Hezbollah and the Houthis. And we aim to stop them from developing a nuclear weapon. Of those three, only one has remained. They've given up on ballistic missiles. Iran cannot build as many as they want, i.e., and in that way, since they've got them targeting all the Gulf facilities, the oil and gas, the desalination plants and everything, they don't need a nuke. They basically, at least locally, nobody's going to touch them. Nobody's going to touch them. Nobody's going to touch them. Who needs a nuke when you got ballistic missiles that can take out every desalination plant in the Arabian Peninsula? Every one of those countries is now beholden to Iran. And they continue, we'll give them $300 billion and they'll use it to fund Hezbollah and Hamas in the future and the Houthis and whatever other groups they want. And here's the thing. All this was avoidable. Right? Why did Trump do this? Trump did this because he wants oil prices to come down. Why are oil prices up? The only reason oil prices are up is because of Trump's strategic mistake on day one of the war, which I pointed out to you. I pointed out to you. What was the strategic mistake? It was letting the Iranians close the Straits of Hormuz. It was completely unnecessary. Completely unnecessary. As I've said over and over and over again, the U.S. Navy had multiple different plans on how to keep the straits open. It just needed a decision by Trump. It needed Trump to actually say, keep the Straits of Hormuz open. Do whatever's necessary to achieve that. He didn't do it. I guess he thought the regime would fall in a week. But that, I have been telling you, and here I've been right 100% from the beginning. From day one, I've been telling you that that was the fatal flaw of the entire episode, the entire mission. And by the way, from what I understand, I don't have proof of this, the military warned him, Mr. President, they're going to close the Straits of Hormuz. They close the Straits of Hormuz, it's going to create real problems for oil and gas. And Trump said, the regime will fall before that. They won't be able to do it. They won't do it. They didn't do it last time. They won't do it this time. And then when they actually did close the Straits of Hormuz, he refused to order them open. It'll go down in world history as one of the biggest blunders, strategic blunders in all of warfare. And 100% predictable. How do I know it's 100% predictable? Because I predicted it. I predicted it. It's so frustrating. And from day one, we've been talking about the Straits of Hormuz, but the need to open them. And again, you don't recover from this. The Chinese are looking at this and thinking, God, the Americans are so incompetent. So unbelievably incompetent. Trump achieved regime change. He killed the father and he got the son instead, son who's always been more radical than the father. He killed a whole bunch. I mean, he didn't do it. The Israelis killed all those people. The Americans did not kill those people. The Israelis did. He killed a bunch of IRGC commanders, and he got what did he get instead? A bunch of IRGC commanders. He replaced one evil, Islamist, fundamentalist, dictatorial, anti-Western, jihadi regime for another evil, dictatorial, Islamist, West-hating, jihadist regime. Some people want to call that regime change because Trump says so. God, Trump's zombie syndrome is real, I'm telling you. It's real. Use those brain cells you have, guys. Anyway, it's devastating. It really is. It's just a disaster. It's devastating. It's depressing. I worry about now, I worry about Israel, but put aside Israel, I worry about America. I worry about today, the next decade, the next 2 decades. How do you live this down? I don't think there's a way to live this down. And this is this will be together with the failures of 9/11, the failures of the financial crisis, the failures of COVID. Now we got this failure. I don't know that America can recover from these failures. I mean, it's lost whatever geopolitical mojo it had. It's lost, right? And what do we go back to now, foreign policy wise? What do we have to lean on? We've got a president who's pro-Russia, basically pro-Iran, pro-China. In America will see its role in the world, maybe with the exception of the Americas, diminished. It'll see, it risks the collapse of trade. I mean, he's clearly anti-trade. He hates trade. This presidency is one abysmal decision after the other. The tariffs, are incredibly destructive to this country. Donald Trump is doing unimagined harm to this country. He's not America first. He literally doesn't give, he's a combination of too ignorant to know what's good for America and not really caring about what's good for America. He only cares about gaining the love of and attention of the people he wants to gain the love of attention of. Edward, you really should. Anyway, you should shut up. What you're revealing about yourself is not pretty. All right. We are in descent. He's going. So this is he's going to the G7. And he's going to meet European leaders and world leaders at the G7. They're all laughing behind their backs at him. They all think he's ridiculous. They all think he's a loser. All of them think he's a loser. Even Macron, who's a real loser, thinks Trump is a loser. They're not going to want to fight with the U.S. But what he's done on trade is ridiculous and stupid, and they know it. What he's done with Iran is ridiculous and a defeat, but primarily affects the U.S., so they don't care, right? And what he does with Russia, I think they've already given up on the U.S. vis-a-vis Russia. So it's going to be interesting to see how these meetings go. They all put up a bright face. This is politics. They're all hypocrites and with no integrity and liars. And so they all put up this face. They all compliment him. They all call him a big piece, his big achievement in creating peace. And in the background, they'll laugh at him. they'll announce an international mission to clear the mines in the Straits of Hormuz. It's meaningless. Straits of Hormuz mines could have been cleared weeks ago by the Americans themselves. It's not that hard. They'll even have an international mission to escort commercial ships out now that there's no threat. Why not? So, yeah, it's a massive embarrassment. Of course, Trump is so clueless that he can't see how embarrassing it is to him. If he had any sense of the world, if he had any sense, right, it would be obvious to him how they're laughing at him and how ridiculous he looks going into this meeting or going into any meeting, right? Any meeting. Macron is I think has already given him a red carpet welcome, but of course he wasn't there. So Trump arrived in Paris, no Macron. So I guess he's going to speak with him, but they're supposed to meet at the airport. Nope, didn't happen. It's yes, and it really, we'll see if Trump throws him a bone by announcing that he won't shrink troops in Europe quite as much as he threatened. He might do that. We will see. We will see. Remember when Trump said he wouldn't end the war with Iran until there was unconditional surrender? You guys didn't think that he meant the unconditional surrender of the United States. I mean, I don't think he thought that either, but that is the end result. A complete unmitigated disaster. And what is so sad about it is that victory was within the grasp. It's Trump that stopped the Kurds from entering Iran because he didn't want to upset Erdogan, the president of the president of Turkey, the Islamist president of Turkey. He stopped the bombing of Tehran and the rest of Iran way prematurely. He refused to attack civilian infrastructure. That part of the sad part about this is they were close. We could have had once in a not once in a decade, once in multi-decades geopolitical achievement by getting rid of the Iranian regime, and Trump blew it. So all of you who predicted that this war would end badly, not because the United States didn't have the military capabilities to win it, but because of Trump, you guys were right. I was overly optimistic, too caught up in the excitement of finally seeing the United States attacking Iran. It's been so long. I've been calling out for such a long time. I thought it was necessary for such a long time that I got carried away, and but should have been able to step back and see it's Trump. It can't end well. And of course, if I'd said that, you would, not most of you, but some of you would have said, TDS again. But every time I say bad stuff about Trump, he lives up to my very low, expectations. All right. The Trump zombie syndrome is strong. All right. Let's see. All right, Anthropic. Anthropic is a ever-changing, ever-evolving, ever weird, ever interesting story. I mean, there's just every week there's something with regard to Anthropic, and of course, I think what Anthropic really represents is the massive uncertainty out there around AI. The fact that Nobody knows what to do with AI exactly. Nobody knows how to handle AI. Nobody knows, the risks and how to deal with those risks. Nobody has a good clue about how to, if the government has a role, and if it does, what should that role be? In the meantime, AI just gets better all the time. I don't know, at some point it might hit a plateau, but right now it's just getting better all the time at certain functions. And it certainly is getting riskier in a sense that bad people using AI can do bad things. And I mean, pretty big bad things, really big bad things. And nobody knows how to handle it. And unfortunately, again, we've got a Trump administration, that doesn't know what to do. They have a lot of people telling them, don't regulate, shouldn't regulate. But there are real risks here, so they know they have to do something. They know that. And they don't know what to do, and different people within the administration are pushing in different directions. Now, I don't know that any other administration would do better, but Trump has no clue. He wouldn't know what an AI was if it bit him. But the people under him, I think there are various groups within the White House vying for position here, and they don't know. They have no idea. All right. So let's go through what happened recently with Anthropic. So we talked about this, I think, last week, I think on Friday or Thursday. We talked about this. We talked about the fact that, I think in the achievement section, or just before the achievement section, we talked about the fact that Anthropic had released Cloud Fable 5. And Cloud Fable 5 was a version of Cloud Mythos 5, but Cloud Mythos 5 was not being released to the general public because two things. The Mythos class of AI has, because of its ability, to code and identify code, has the ability to find security weaknesses in software way too easily, and then provide people with the ability to hack software. And some of that software is running the infrastructure behind pretty much everything we have in the world today. So Anthropic has said, we're not going to release Mythos publicly. We'll release it only to trusted parties, other big tech companies, so they can test it out, their old programs, to the government, to a few other entities. They can check and find for vulnerabilities and fix them. So Fable 5 was released, which is a version of Mythos, but it cannot find the gaps in programming in these infrastructure software. As soon as somebody asks it to do that, it downgrades to an old version of Claude, which doesn't have that capability. Second thing it does is Mythos has the ability to generate, to teach you how to make biological weapons, which are relatively easy to make. Again, Fable downgrades you. If you try to ask him about that, it downgrades you to another version of Claude where you can't do that. So it released Fable 5 to the general public, and this is the most powerful AI out there today, right? These models, according to Anthropic, cross some kind of threshold in terms of cybersecurity and biological capabilities. And that's why it, in a sense, puts safeguards into Fable. Then late Friday, June 12th, so this last Friday, the U.S. government issued an export control directive. It required Anthropic to suspend access to Fable 5 and Mythos 5 by any foreign national, including foreign nationals' Anthropic employees inside the United States. Indeed, I think its chief science officer is a foreign national. He couldn't use the program he helped develop. So, so Anthropic said it can't do that. So it had to basically disable both models completely for everybody, for all its users, because it can't track who is a foreign national, who is not. It sends a model to Google. It doesn't know which employees are using it. Now, supposedly the government's concern was that there were claims that people could jailbreak Fiber 5 and get around the safeguards and actually use it to identify software vulnerabilities. For example, supposedly Amazon had run some tests on this and discovered the jailbreak. And Amazon is the one that called up the Trump administration and told them this is not good. Now, Amazon is a competitor of Anthropic, but Amazon is also a big investor in Anthropic. So it's probably not motivated by by competition. It's not clear what exactly is going on, and it's not clear how bad the vulnerabilities are. Anthropic says it's reviewed, these jailbreaks, and found that they were all previously known, and they're all minor, and that you can find it in pretty much every public model. Now, over the weekend, the story becomes political, not just technical. Reuters reports Anthropic technical staff were scheduled to meet Commerce Department officials Monday, and that the company had been in daily contact with officials since Friday. More than 80 cybersecurity executives and experts reportedly signed a letter urging the administration to lift the restrictions. But then remember, Anthropic is the one that that people within the Trump administration have called woke, have criticized them for coding into Anthropic leftist ideology. And it's also the one that the Pentagon was using, and the Pentagon as, not just kicked them out, but has deemed them as a supply chain risk, which means almost nobody else within the universe of the Pentagon, all the companies working with the Pentagon, can use Anthropic. Now, Anthropic is suing. That is in court right now. We'll see what happens with the whole thing. So Anthropic and the Trump administration, administration accused Anthropic of making woke AI, called the chief executive, Dario Amodei, an ideological lunatic. And there'd been disagreement about AI regulations and semiconductor export policies. And then, of course, we know what happened with the Pentagon and Anthropic, and deemed them a supply chain risk. So all of this is tied up with ideology and with, that he's a leftist, and with politics, in the Defense Department, and there's a lawsuit, and, it's a mess. Now, it turns out that, actually, it wasn't the chief scientist, but at least one top AI scientist at Anthropic is barred from accessing the company's most advanced AI model because he's not a U.S. citizen as of Friday. Now, the White House says, we tried to call Anthropic and let them know before we put out this order. We tried to get them to fix it. Anthropic says that that's completely false. White House says export controls were the last resort after begging them for hours to work with us. Anthropic says we responded within 75 minutes. Government gave no details of the threat. So, I mean, who do you believe? And this is also tied in with the fact that, the CEO of Anthropic is a political figure. He is a leftist. And the reality is that he is, he has been urging the government to regulate AI. And the reality is that the CEO of Anthropic, published a white paper on Friday, same day, urging the government to regulate AI, to actually create an FAA-style agency to approve all frontier AI models before they're released, with the government authority to block deployment if an independent auditor deemed the model too risky. His proposal, of course, is all about safety and cybersecurity and bioweapons and loss of control and all of this. But it's also, such regulations would give Anthropic a competitive advantage. Not vis-a-vis ChatGPT and Google and Google Gemini and maybe XAI, but vis-a-vis the alternative, which is open source AI. Open source AI, there's no body to actually put it up online. Send it to the government, get permission. This would just shut down open source AI because they couldn't get a regulatory permission for their models. So Anthropic is fighting with the government and at the same time arguing for massive government regulation of AI. Now, government probably does have a role to play here. And government has a role to play here because AI really does potentially represent a national security threat. Now, what the best way for the government to deal with this threat is, a better government than we have today would have to figure out how to do it without stifling innovation, without blocking competition, without just favoring the big companies that can afford to deal with regulators. How do you encourage competition at the same time prevent the national security risks involved? And, I don't have an answer for that. But it can be...
It's a great point.
It can be a method that basically eliminates competition. It can be one that restricts the building of AIs only to the existing big companies. But it also can be, there's no liability. Do whatever you will. I mean, maybe it's the creation of a liability system, whereas AI companies are held liable for any damage that is caused as a consequence of the use of their models. How do you apply that to open source models? I don't know. You'd have to think about that. So there's some real tricky issues here that somebody is going to have to do some deep thinking and work to figure out. It's not me. I'm not familiar enough with the industry itself. But somebody's going to have to do the work. This is what you have. Ideally, in a truly free society, you have legal philosophers, really with a tech background, really thinking through these issues and trying to figure out how to best.
You're missing one piece of it, which is at the
keeps coming on. How to best deal with something like this. Anyway, everybody's commenting on this. All the different tech people, all the AI, different companies. Everybody's got a position. Everybody's got an opinion. There's a lot of conflict going on. I don't know what the right thing is. I mean, I think what's going to happen here, I hope, is Anthropic can fix whatever problems there are with their AI, so that it can be released again to the public. To stop innovation, to stop growth, to stop progress is wrong. But if there are real issues, get them to fix. And I'm not sure this is how the government should be interacting with them. Bans on foreign nationals. What? American citizens can't use this for ill? Lots of people can use this for ill. It has nothing to do with foreign citizens. That's again such a xenophobic, typical Trump administration type thing. Only the foreigners can use this for bad stuff. Anyway, let's see what happens. Let's see if they're going to fix this. What interest do they have not to fix it? If the jailbreak is not that big of a deal, then just deal with it. But again, Anthropic is saying these weaknesses in the AI exist in every AI, and they're not a big deal. Why is anybody making a deal out of this? I have no clear opinion about that. All right, that is Anthropic. We will have, my guess is, almost every day stories about AI. AI is just going to become a dominant part of our world. And that's mostly for the good. Mostly for the good. All right, let's see. This is last week. This happened, I guess, last week or this weekend. Happened this weekend. In Switzerland, a lot of governance happens through propositions, through just votes, proposals that everybody votes on, the entire population votes on. Different suggestions, raise taxes, lower taxes. Anyway, this weekend, Switzerland voted on a proposal to cap the size of the country's population to 10 million. Now, I assume they didn't mean that, if you had lots of babies and you exceeded 10 million, you'd have to kick the babies out of the country. This is mainly targeted at immigration, right? So the idea is, and it's not about citizenship, it was about population, the number of people living in Switzerland. And the idea was we should cap it at 10 million people. Switzerland, which is about the size of Michigan's Upper Peninsula, not very big, right? Michigan's Upper Peninsula has a population about 9.1 million, and they've grown 25% in the 21st century. Since 2000, they've grown 25%. And almost all that growth has come from immigration. So a lot of people come to Switzerland to try to escape the tax rates in other countries. The ballot measure would have begun to impose some limits on growth when its population hit 9.5 million, and then capped it at 10. Right. The proposition failed. 55% of Swiss voted against it, to 45% who vote for it. I'm sure only citizens vote in this. In most Western countries, populations are actually shrinking because of low birth rates in many Western countries. And it's going to be very difficult for them to grow without kind of immigrants. But anyway, this is the whole idea was, the way this was pitched this was designed to protect Switzerland's public services and its environment. But the party that proposed it, the Swiss People's Party, has a long history of anti-immigration platforms and trying to get people to vote on, against immigration and reduce immigration. Anyway, they voted it down. So good for the Swiss. There should be no limits on the size of a country. It should have no restrictions, and Switzerland doesn't let everybody become a citizen, and it has doesn't have open borders. It has stringent immigration requirements, and yet its population has grown because of immigrants. Immigrants are increasing. I was just in Zurich, and it was lovely there. Anyway, thought you'd want to know you can still go to Switzerland. Peru had an election, and the choice in the election was between a far leftist, almost commie, and Keiko Fujimori, who is the daughter of Alberto Fujimori, who was a pretty authoritarian ruler of Peru. When was this? About 20 plus years ago. And he landed up in jail, ultimately, and died in jail a few years ago. She has now run for the presidency of Peru. I think this was her fourth time, and she lost 3 times. She finally won this time. She, runs the movement that her father created, that led to his rule in the 1990s, I guess, up until 2000. He did do a few good things. He smashed the brutal Maoist insurgency that was in Peru. He smashed hyperinflation. And he actually did quite a few things to liberate and liberalize the Peruvian economy. So I think he did a pretty good job. A pretty good job. But he was also brutal. I mean, he didn't have a lot of respect for individual rights. A lot of torture and murder, and a lot of corruption, which he sat in jail for ultimately. And her father actually supported free market policies. Now, it's not clear whether Keiko does as well. She is much more of a populist right-winger. So it's going to be interesting to see what she actually does. She's pledged to crack down on violent crime, modeling herself, like all South Americans do these days, on the dictator president of El Salvador, right? That is the model. But will she actually deal with the economy and actually continue liberalization and turn Peru into a free market? She won by a sliver. She has, she basically won with just above 50% of the vote. I mean, it's 50.002%. And just a few hundred votes out of 20 million people. So it's not like she has a massive, confidence of the people. So it's going to be interesting. Now she joins other right-wingers that are, have won recently in other countries. Now, all of basically Latin America. Only Uruguay, Colombia, and Brazil have left of center governments, and Colombia probably is going to have a populist right-winger as president soon here. Brazil will see in the coming elections, and I'm not sure about Uruguay. So, Keiko is, we're going to have to watch and see what she does. She's been in politics since she was basically by the side of her father. She acted like the first lady as early as when she was a teenager. She has no charisma. She claims she's rejecting her father's authoritarian tendencies. We'll see if she lives up to that. I mean, the elder Fujimori dissolved Congress, arrested political opponents, held fraudulent elections. She says she will not do any of that. And we'll see whether she is pro-free markets. That'll be, I mean, from my perspective, that is the ultimate test. And can she clamp down on crime without mass violation of rights? That'll be the question. All right. We will see what happens. We will follow Peru as we follow other countries in Latin America as they go through this transition. Roland says, I'm going to read this out of order. Roland said, not only do immigrants come to Switzerland, some of them even support the Yaron Brook show. This is Roland, who basically is here every day contributing Swiss francs, very, very valuable Swiss francs. I'm glad the proposition was voted down. I feel a lot better about living here this way. Thank you, Roland. I appreciate all the support. And I, too, am glad it was voted down and that you're there. And, you know, the number of objectivists in Switzerland that I know, and I don't think any of them are Swiss. Italians, Roland is from Hungary. That's right. Orban's Hungary, or pre-Orban's Hungary. Roland is from Hungary. I know somebody from Denmark. I mean, all the Swiss objectivists are like foreigners. There might be a few Swiss objectivists, but the rest are people who live there who were not born there. And I don't know if they're even citizens, probably not citizens. All right, let's see. Candace. We have to talk about Candace. Candace. And then we'll get to the good news. A lot of good news. There's Candace. This is a clip of Candace talking about Russia. And I only play this because, God, so many people on the right, just think Russia is great. They just think Russia is so cool. Now, she went to Russia. She visited. And she's now advocating for this. Russia is the future. Russia is just amazing. All this while Russia is losing to Ukraine. Its economy is in tatters. Not to mention just everything else that's horrible about Russia. So I thought we'd just watch this quickly. I'd give you a few stats about Russia, and we would move on. So here is Candace Owen. Here is Candace Owen on Russia.
My takeaway from visiting Russia is that it is our society that is on the decline, not theirs. Russia, like I said, has not been communist in over 30 years.
And we are. So Russia is more authoritarian, more socialist in its, role of government in business than we are. We're heading in that direction. But we're more socialist than Russia? Where does she live? What universe does she come from? I mean, she really is, she's being paid by somebody to say this stuff, I guess. Or she's just nuts, which is probably true as well. She's probably both, being paid by somebody and she's nuts.
What about us? Pornography, welfarism, nonstop war.
Pornography and welfarism. Do you get a sense that in Russia they use less pornography or more pornography than the U.S.? I haven't seen stats. I don't know if there are stats about this, but pornography? I mean, is that what's killing America? And is that what doesn't exist in Russia? I mean, God. Have you guys ever been to Russia? I mean, I think prostitution is more prevalent in Russia than it is in the United States. So I think prostitution is worse than pornography. I mean, I remember last time I was in Russia. I think that, yeah, this was in Moscow. I'm pretty sure it was in Moscow. Maybe it was in Petersburg. I can't remember. Either one of those. I want to go to dinner, and so somebody said there's a really nice, nice restaurant across the street. Everything was snowed in. It was ice. It was difficult to walk for me, right? And I go to this restaurant. I go in, and it is really, really nice. And it's like, it looks like it could have been a California restaurant, could have been a restaurant in Miami. Very hip music going on. The waitresses are gorgeous. Everybody's gorgeous in this restaurant except the men. And then I notice this, and I've never seen anything quite like it. Every single table was occupied by a middle-aged Russian man, mostly overweight, and a gorgeous 20, 30-year-old Russian woman. I mean, and Russian women can be beautiful. As Tolstoy said, the beauty of Russian women is very short-lived. It doesn't last for very long. But they can be very beautiful. Anyway, every single table, some tables had two couples, but it was always the couples were always the same. Pretty ugly middle-aged men and beautiful young women. That's Russia for you. But they watch less porn, I guess, according to Candace. And we have welfarism in America. We have welfarism. I wonder if more people or less people are on the government's dole in Russia or in America. I mean, I don't know what the answer to that is. Maybe it is America. And I'm with Candace about let's get rid of welfarism. I'm all for that. Let's get rid of welfarism. You don't have to compare us to Russia. I mean, indeed, we have more welfare in America than in China. China has less welfare, a lot less welfare than the United States.
Debt.
Debt? Have you seen how much debt Russia's accumulating right now? Not to mention inflation. We're worried because inflation is like 4%. Oh my God, 4%. Russia's inflation is over 20. Interest rates, over 20. Really? Is this a problem? I mean, I agree with welfarism, but debt.
People telling us that this is freedom. Stop war, debtorism, nonstop war, debt.
Nonstop war. Isn't that fascinating? I mean, here, complete delusional, right? Completely delusional. Yeah, we just had a war. It was pretty short because Trump surrendered. But how long has Russia's war been going on? And even though they attacked a pretty weak enemy, they're losing on the battlefield, or at least not winning on the battlefield for sure. At least the United States won on the battlefield. It lost in diplomacy, but it won on the battlefield. They can't even win on the battlefield. And it's an endless war. Started in, 2002? February 2002. 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago. Still going. So endless war? I mean, this just shows how completely delusional she is. Completely. But the thing is, she is a symptom of an entire right that is dedicated to this.
People telling us that this is freedom, right? This is great. This is you being free. You wouldn't want to live in Russia. That's the boogeyman syndrome, right? They're comparing it to something that you've never seen so that you don't, riot in the streets. I
actually have been to Russia, been to St. Petersburg and Moscow at least. I've been there, and read a lot about it and followed what they do. And yeah, you don't want to live in Russia. I also noticed that people are much more likely to leave Russia than come in. Now, they do have some illegal immigrants from Central Asia who come in, mainly Muslims from Central Asia, but mostly Russians are leaving. When the war started, Russians fled. I mean, as bad as the war with Iran is, Americans haven't left America because of it. I mean, maybe some, but not en masse. So what is she talking about? And then, add to that, just a few stats. Russia has the world's highest divorce rates. I think Candace is anti-divorce. I'm pretty sure she's anti-divorce. Russia has about double America's alcoholism rates. Now, we probably have a bigger drug problem. Their preferred drug is alcohol, but they have a drug. It's alcohol. If it's such a beautiful, amazing, wonderful place, why do they drink so much? And then, you know, we're constantly told by these right-wing nuts that Russia is where, it's a good Christian country. It turns out only 12% of Russians attend religious services once a month or more, whereas in the United States, that number is 34%. Americans are 3 times more likely to attend church than Russians. 3 times more. It's a very secular country. That's not that's a good thing, but not in the way it manifests itself in Russia. And then they tell you that it's a white culture. Oh, white. They're the defenders of white civilization. But the percentage of non-whites in Russia is much higher than the percentage of non-whites in any other European country. The percentage of Muslims in Russia is much higher than the percentage of Muslims in any other European country. Indeed, the country most susceptible to Islam taking over is not France or the UK. You might think it is. It's Russia, the country that's had the most terrorist attacks by Muslims. Is Russia. So, I mean, the cluelessness of people like her and just the whole right and the infatuation with Russia is pretty stunning. It really is. Pretty amazing stuff. All right, now we get to the part that I know all of you have been waiting for, and that is the good news section. Good news section. All right, let's start. We got 5 stories. We'll do them quickly. First, there was a big story in the New York Times today about the fact that Africa has a growing middle class. And what is one indication of a growing middle class? What do middle class people do that poor people tend not to do? Travel. The reality is that Africans are now traveling, primarily around Africa. There is a new African tourism. Over the past few years, if you look at places like Dakar and Senegal and other places, you see more and more tourists from other parts of Africa. The number of tourists visiting African countries grew by almost 8% last year, the fastest growth in the world. According to This surge isn't being driven by visitors from Europe or Asia. It's being driven in large part by growing African middle class that is exploring the continent for the first time. And the most visible travelers are millennials and Gen Zers. And they're changing African ideas about leisure, travel, and even about what Africa is. This is great. I am a huge supporter. Huge supporter of African development. This is a quote from the chief executive of Africa's Eden, a nonprofit that promotes African tourism. Travel is increasingly seen as part of an identity of everyday life, rather than a luxury. African travelers are viewing their own continent as aspirational, sophisticated, and worth exploring. I mean, if the African food I've eaten in London is any reflection of food in Africa, count me in. Now, some of the advantages are, first of all, a lot of new flights, a lot of discount carriers, although there's still some of the highest prices in the world. They need massive deregulation there. But they've been improving. Prices have been coming down. So there's been more competition. There's also a lot of countries that allow you to travel within Africa visa-free. So places like Benin, Gambia, Kenya, Ghana have scrapped visas for African passport holders. It's also now a free trade zone, which is going to increase standard of living, increase the middle class, and increase cross-travel. People are going to travel more for business. They can experience other parts of Africa. They're then going to want to go on vacation. Right? In Nigeria, you can see big billboards advertising stress-free weekend in Benin. Right? So Africa is potentially up and coming. Potentially up and coming. We'll see how it evolves. The free trade zone is a great first step. They need to liberate their economies. They need to establish respect for property rights. Education needs to be improved across Africa, but it's happening. Africa is gaining a middle class. So that's good news. All right, let's see. The U.S. has a grid operators, and there's a ton of regulations about, getting on the grid. So let's say you build a power plant, and now you want to connect your power plant to the grid. It can take forever. It's unbelievable amount of paperwork and everything. Anyway, as part of the deregulation of the Trump administration, last week, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission approved a proposal to expedite interconnections. That is, they've created a new process. It's temporary, but they want to make it permanent, to advance projects of significant size, to make it easy for them to connect to the grid quickly, right? And the idea is to add generation as fast as we can. We've got massive increases in demand for electricity. It's only going to get more so. And if you build a power plant, then you have to sit it idle because you can't connect to the grid. It's a disaster. It's hard enough to build a power plant. It's so regulatory burdensome to build a power plant. And then you can't even deploy it. So there is some loosening of regulations to make that possible. That is good news. Here's one that's almost ludicrous and funny, but it's true. For 20 years, right? For 20 years, there's been a sunscreen chemical ingredient called bemotrizinol, something like that. B-E-M-T, BEMT, it's called, BEMT, that has been approved in Europe for 20 years and approved in other countries and has not been approved by the FDA. So the United States had very limited options when it came to sunscreen. But again, the FDA equivalent in Europe has said, no, this is completely safe for over 20 years. Well, anyway, the FDA finally, last Wednesday, after 20 plus years, has approved BEMT as for sunscreens. Expect much more competition in the sunscreen world and more choices. For those of us living in the sun, this is good news. Generally, sunscreen good. Getting burnt by the sun, bad. Yeah, I mean, pretty clear cut. All right. Amazon says that thanks to advanced AI, its next generation warehouse robot can now be assigned tasks by employees the way you'd communicate with a colleague. The company unveiled the latest version of Proteus robot on Thursday, and you can just tell Proteus what to do. Proteus was first introduced in 2022 as the first fully autonomous mobile robot. It's designed to operate in dark areas and fulfillment centers, carrying carts full of packages that could weigh nearly 400 kilograms, 882 pounds, over long distances. The new Proteus robot will be able to work across more parts of Amazon's facilities, anywhere items need to be moved, including transporting containers and delivery sites. But the biggest upgrade is the fact that employees can now talk to it. And they don't even have to use technical commands or programming interface. All they have to do is use plain language, conversational language, to tell her what to do. So not only is AI coming, the robots are coming. The robots are coming, and yeah, it's going to be a brand new world with robots everywhere. All right, by the way, many of these stories come from Human Progress. You can find humanprogress.org. Humanprogress.org has a bunch of these good news stories on a regular basis. Here's one which is basically to combat, the purpose of which is to combat the degrowth. Whoops, I don't want Candace. I want that. Whoops, and it's miss. One second. There we go. That's where it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be right there. All right, we can enlarge it a little bit so you can see it better. All right, there it is. So we talked about degrowth last time. And in this degrowth paper that was published last week in The Guardian, these Stiglitz, a Nobel Prize winning economist, and other economists wrote that growth is no good and it doesn't help the poor. Growth is no good and it doesn't help the poor. Well, this is a graph. These are 9 graphs. They're divided up. Each graph within the 9 is a region of the world. And on the y-axis, you have the percentage of people living in poverty. Now, what does poverty mean here? Poverty is measured by the cost of basic needs. It represents the share the share of the population which is unable to obtain a bundle of very basic goods and services. Okay? Price changes, inflation, and price differences between countries, all taken into account in this measure. The x-axis represents GDP per capita. So high GDP per capita countries, not surprisingly, by the way, have very, very low rates of poverty. Low GDP per capita countries have very high rates of poverty. And when you look at the same country, when they go from low GDP per capita to high GPT per capita, what you get is a reduction in the number of people who are very poor. Which means growing GDP, in particular growing GPT per capita, is a good thing. And it would, from the perspective of poverty, it's a good thing from other perspectives, but from the perspective of poverty. Now, if you look here on the left, the top left graph is for the world, global average. And you can see that poverty is very low today. And it's directly related to the fact that GDP per capita has gone up. Western Europe basically has no poverty, no extreme poverty. And that's because Western Europe hit high levels of GDP per capita very early on. The top right, which I know you can't see because I'm blocking it, you'll just have to believe me, is US, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. And and the interesting thing is that, Western Europe and the United States eradicated poverty at relatively low GDP per capita levels, which means there's no extreme poverty. There's no extreme inequality, if you would call it that, versus other places where you might have an average number that is high, but there's massive inequality and you still have poor people. as a consequence. East Asia, for example, you see more of that. South and Southeast Asia. So Southeast Asia, at the rate of GDP that they have, they're not quite at the level where the West eradicated poverty. So if you look at Sub-Saharan Africa, if you look at Mideast and North Africa, if you look at Eastern Europe, if you look at East Asia, South and Southeast Asia, Latin American, Caribbean, all show exactly the same thing. Exactly the same phenomena. One second, let me just do this. They all show a decline in poverty. So I don't know what these degrowthers are talking about. I have no idea, what is. I don't know what they're talking about. In other words, no idea. These graphs completely refute whatever you could argue are economic policies, right? Oh, right. Those are the graphs. Still not seeing them right. What did I do? You guys arguing with Jonathan, who is a massive distorter of Israel, and yeah. All right. Anyway, no point. Let's see. All right. That, my friends, is the news for this Monday, June 15th. You're in a public chat. Nobody cares what you entertain or what you don't entertain, Jonathan. All right, let's take a look at our super chat questions. Thank you guys for supporting the show. We are short of our second hour goal by $75. Oh no, not by $75. I wish it was $75. By $175. So we're short of the goal by quite a bit. So those of you who are on here, please consider supporting the show. The 150 of you, shouldn't be that hard. You can ask questions by asking questions on the super chat. You get to interact. I get to answer whatever you want to ask me. I get to answer your questions. So jump in and feel free to ask anything. I answer all questions. All questions. Also, those of you who would like to support the show, because value for value, you know what trade is. I'm prepare the material, do the work, present it, do all that, and you guys pay for it, just like you would pay for any other product or any other service that you receive. I live off of this, so I have certain minimums that I need in order to make a living off of this. So $500 for 2 hours is $250 an hour, and we're about $175 short of the $500. So please consider jumping in with some support. Those of you who are not on live, you can support the show on a monthly basis, going to Patreon and becoming a Patreon subscriber. Anything $2 to $1,000. At $10, you get the podcast with no advertising. At $25, you get to participate on the video panel in the AMA. At $250, you get a one-on-one with me once a month, and $500, you get a one-on-one with me $250, it's every quarter. $500 is every month. So please consider joining us and supporting the show one way or another. Figure out which way is best for you, and please try to try to find a way to support the show if you can live. I know a lot of you are watching this on Twitter right now, so come on over. If you're on Twitter, come on over and to YouTube, where you can support this. We've got 150 on YouTube and 150 on Twitter. So we got 300 people watching live. We should be able to make that 175 up pretty quickly. All right. Let's see. Sponsors. The Ayn Rand Institute is a sponsor of the show. The Ayn Rand Institute is reminding you that they have ARI Live. ARI Live. You can find information about ARI Live at aynrand.org/YBS. aynrand.org/YBS. And ARI Live is offering courses to deepen your understanding in objectivism. I will be teaching a course on globalization, on trade and globalization. We'll do the economics, the politics, the history. There's a course by Anka Gate on objectivism, and 2 courses by Keith, one on writing, how to be a good writer, and the second course is on science. I think it's on optics, and that should be amazing. I hear fantastic things about Keith's science courses, so I encourage you to take it. All right, Alex Epstein. Alex Epstein is the world authority on all things energy, all things electricity, and all things the politics of energy and electricity. If you want to understand what's going on in the world right now with regard to energy and climate change and regulations and all this, Alex is the guy. You can follow him at alexepstein.substack.com, alexepstein.substack.com. There's also an Alex AI, which is amazing. It's really, really, really good. And Hendershot Wealth, hendershotwealth.com/YBS. You can get information about how to save a lot of money on capital gains taxes. If you face a capital gains tax liability, you can structure investment products that will reduce that liability significantly without harming your returns. So check it out, hendershotwealth.com/YBS. And my interview with Robert is on the playlists under sponsors. Always great to interview Robert, so check out the interview. And finally, defendersofcapitalism.com. Defendersofcapitalism.com is Michael Williams's website. I've helped develop the program that's there. And it's a program that defends capitalism from a political, social, economic, and moral, philosophical perspective. So check it out. Sign up for the newsletter once you're up there. All right, remind you again, patreon.com, Yaron Brook Show. Become a monthly supporter. You can also do that on PayPal. Patreon might be a little easier to navigate, but you can do it on both sites. A lot of you already monthly subscribers. More is better. There are a lot of you who are not. A lot of you listening, particularly those who are not listening live, who are not monthly supporters yet. Do it now and get it over with. And then you won't have to feel that guilt of not paying for the values you receive. Earned guilt in this case. Earned guilt. All right. Let's jump in with the questions. Oh, let me thank the sticker people first. And you should become a sticker person. You should come in and give a sticker. You don't have to ask a question. I know some of you are shy or don't have questions, but just do a sticker. Mary Eileen did a sticker. Newly Dan, thank you. Stephen Harper, thank you. Gail, thank you. And I know Selfish Subscriber did $50 in a sticker. $50 moves the needle quite a bit here on the Yaron Brook Show. You know, all we need is 4 of those $50 stickers, and we're done for the day. We reach our target. So please consider, if you can afford $50, and if you think the show is worth $50, please do it. Bonnie, thank you for the sticker. And yeah, I think I caught everybody. Thank you, guys. All right, let's jump into with questions. We'll start with Michael, as we often do. Michael has a $50 question. Again, $50 questions are welcome. We can make our goal very quickly if we have a few of those. All right. Even though Central Park is run by a private entity, if private developers wanted to build a skyscraper in Central Park, the city would never allow it. Is it possible under laissez-faire some dense urban cities would have little or no green spaces? I mean, it's unlikely. Again, Central Park was created by private people. They bought the land, they created Central Park, and they organized it into a nonprofit dedicated to keeping it a park. So, it's in its charter, it's in its creation. You can't turn it into something else, right? So, but in a laissez-faire economy, you'd still have the ability to create a non-profit with a charter that assigned it that kind of role and responsibility. I doubt that you would have cities with no parks. Parks are real value. And look, again, in the 19th century or 20th century, as New York was growing significantly, rich people figured that a park would be an immense value to them. And look, it's a big chunk of Manhattan. Central Park is huge. And it's not just Central Park. If you walk through Manhattan, you will find parks in a number of different places, and many of them private. Same thing in London. London is filled with parks. And some of the parks, I think most of the parks in London are public, some of the parks are private. And some of the parks are so private that they're gated and you can't get in unless you're a resident of the block and paying into the maintenance of the park. So all kinds of things would arise in a free market, but as long as people value parks, there would be parks. Right? So it's a question of the value open spaces have for people. And history suggests, particularly for wealthy societies, that once people get to a certain wealth and an urban situation, they value open spaces. They have vacation homes, but they value their surrounding greenery. And that's why they invest in things like parks. So my view, private cities would be very green, Private cities in the sense of everything was privatized. All right, Hopper Campbell. Do you think people who are better looking don't have to develop as much personality or intellect? People naturally gravitate around them with less effort on their part. More doors just open up for them. I don't understand what that means. Don't have to develop as much personality or intellect. For what? For what? I mean, what is the purpose of life? If it's for happiness and success and achieving great values, not just what comes easy, but great values, then of course they need to develop their personality and intellect. Looks have nothing to do with that. If you're asking, do some things come more easily to good-looking people? Yeah, probably. But they come easy. So how important or how great are they? Women who care about looks, or men who care about looks, will gravitate towards good-looking people. But are those the people you most care about? That is, are those the people you want around you? They'll gravitate towards you, but are they the ones you want? You know? I mean, if you're a decent human being who wants to live a happy, long life, do you want to be surrounded by people who care about looks? And yeah, maybe in a job interview, if you're about the same level of somebody else and you're good looking and they're not, you might get the job. Maybe there's a bias like that. Okay, but then can you live up to that job? And then can you advance? And can you push yourself? At some point, your looks are not going to get you very far. So, no, I think some things come easier for them. But often, because they're easy, they're not that valuable. And because they're easy, you have to question whether the kind of thing like companionship, is that it's the kind of people you want. I mean, I don't understand that. I mean, looks they're important to some extent, right? Aesthetics has value. aesthetical appeal has value. Beauty has value. But it's certainly not the only thing of value, and it's not that high of a value when you're considering friendship, love, romance, long-term relationships. It's just, who cares? Right? So the physical aspect might have some appeal to people, but the people who it has appeal to are the people you want to attract. Probably not. Do you want that superficiality? Probably not. So, of course, they have to develop personality and intellect because they value themselves. You're not measured by how many people, attracted to you, gravitate towards you. You're measured by what you do with your life, and that requires developing a personality and intellect. Liam said, General Patton said, quote, if everyone is thinking alike, then somebody isn't thinking. Yes, that's a great quote. But if reality is what it is, honest people should be thinking alike constantly. No, because, about simple things, about things that are self-evident, but thinking is not self-evident. Thinking is complicated. What facts are relevant? So think about even science, right? So when Newton comes out with his laws, it takes a long time to convince everybody he's right. It's not simple. It's not easy. You have to show them experimentally. You have to show them the math. You have to look at it, figure it out. Ultimately, they all come to agree. But, there's certain things that are perceptually evident that we can all immediately agree on. But anytime you have to really engage in thinking, context of knowledge, and just the effort you put into it is going to determine, and you're not going to agree. And what Patton is referring to is somebody looking at the new facts, somebody expanding the context, somebody thinking beyond. We're talking about complex problems, like in war, somebody thinking about a possibility nobody else thought of, because there's no end to the number of variations of things that can happen, particularly if you're trying to predict the future, which is what strategy is. So there's always another angle. There's always more to do. Now, maybe the new person who comes to the new thought is proved to be wrong, and then he joins everybody else. But life and reality and truth is not that simple. It's not that simple. I don't think Liam was talking about the majority. He wasn't talking about voting. That's not the issue. The issue is if truth is simple, why don't everybody just see it and then it's true? So wouldn't you have consensus? It's about discovering something is true is hard, not easy. James, how many condos did you tour before settling on the one you purchased? How did you know this one was the right one? Different homes that I bought, I've toured different numbers of ones. Sometimes it's the last one you tour that you fall in love with. Sometimes it's the first one. I have certain standards of what I want, and I take them. Here in Puerto Rico, when we were looking, how many condos did we see when we first rented in this building? I don't know, 4 or 5. And, and we had 2 that we wanted, and, and we made an offer on both. And we landed up with this one, which turned out to be the better choice by far. And then when we were going to buy, what we really wanted was to buy the penthouse in the building we were renting in. So we knew exactly what we wanted. And it wasn't available, so we looked around. We saw there are not that many good buildings in San Juan. So we looked around 4, 5, 6 places, and we knew which one we preferred of those. And there's also an issue of what you can afford. And then luckily, the penthouse in the building we were renting became available, and we immediately bought it. So we placed a bid the day it became available. I don't know. I mean, how did you know it was the right one? Because it is consistent with the things that you value. I mean, we valued size and relatively high ceilings and a great view and lots of windows and light. That's what we valued. That's what we got. So we have the, I think we have the best view in Puerto Rico, or at least in San Juan, in the city. But I'm sure, anyway. But it's we have a magnificent place, so it was easy. By the way, when we saw it, it was crummy. I mean, the place was badly maintained. It had walls in the wrong places. It had to be. We had to do significant renovation to the main living space to turn it into what we wanted, because we like flow and we like open spaces and we like the views. And it had a kitchen that blocked the view and walls that blocked the spaces for no good reason. So we moved everything around. We moved the kitchen to a different place in order to create the condo we wanted. We knew the potential that it had, and it is indeed gorgeous. Not your average algorithm, part 1. I was speaking to some moderate conservative friends of mine, and they were saying how public housing projects should be moved out of certain neighborhoods. I replied public housing should be abolished altogether. It didn't compute, as though my comment was so beyond the pale they couldn't process it seriously. Yeah, I think that's right. So altruism, I mean, what do you mean? What will those people do? Where will they live? How will they live? How can they survive without the state, making it possible for them? I mean, everybody holds that. There's a tiny minority of people who actually believe that a free market would generate better outcomes, and that a free market is the right thing to do, and that morality doesn't require your sacrifice for the sake of those in need. But that's what it requires. Right? So they can't think. They can't think outside of that. They can't think outside of altruism. Altruism dictates their whole approach to public policy. It's why you can't cut Social Security and Medicare. You can't touch the welfare state. You can't touch public housing. There's all these things that are third rail in politics. They all are directly related to altruism. Directly. All right. Christopher says, who thinks the show should take advantage of that view? The problem with that is you can't really appreciate the view through the camera, but also there'd be a lot of light behind me. I would be shadowed, right? Because the light is coming in through the windows. So if the camera's facing the window and I'm standing in front of the window, the lighting is all messed up. The lighting would be all messed up. So it wouldn't work well to have the view as the background of the show. I mean, I would love to have that. Plus, the view is in the master bedroom and in the living area. The office, I have a view here, particularly in Sunset. It's pretty nice, but mostly of buildings. And then in the distance, you can see Old San Juan and so the cruise ships. And again, the sunset is pretty gorgeous. But, yep. All right, Nature Observer says, when Fable 5 was active, I asked it about vegetation on Baffin Island in the Arctic. But it refused to answer because the question had biological content. That's pretty stupid. I got an answer from a lower level, grass, moss, etc. That's pretty funny. That really is pretty funny, because you'd think that their ability to calibrate what constitutes a potentially bioterrorist question would be more sophisticated than just anything biological. Don't answer. Unless there's something growing. I mean, this is suspicious. Maybe there's something growing on Baffin Island. that is a biological weapon just like that. Maybe the etc. that you have listed, the grass moths, etc. Maybe some part of that etc., which it won't list, the lower version, and which Fable 5 would list, is in and of itself a biological weapon. Anyway, I'm kidding, but the whole thing is a little ridiculous. All right, guys, I wanted to thank Wes. There he is, Wes, for the $50 sticker. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Wes has come through. We're still $75 short of where we need to be. If stickers, $1, $5, $2, $10, whatever you can, would be great if we can just chip away. We've got a few more minutes of the show. We're already in the third hour, which would make the ask $375. But let's just, if we could make it the second hour ask, that would be great. So let's chip away at this. Roman asks, Al-Ghazali seems to be the Islamic Immanuel Kant. No, not really. I mean, because Immanuel Kant was a philosopher who presented a new philosophy. He articulated an entire system of philosophy that covers pretty everything, and he did it philosophically. Al-Ghazali basically rejects philosophy in the name of religion. So it would be like Thomas Aquinas, but Thomas Aquinas coming to the conclusion we should abandon all reason and embrace only religion and mysticism. And that's kind of what Al-Ghazali does. He doesn't build a philosophical system to undermine reason and to undermine, the Enlightenment, the Islamic Golden Age. He says, stop philosophizing, stop dealing with philosophy, stop looking at the Greeks, stop looking at foreign cultures. Everything you need is in the Quran. Focus on faith and mysticism. See, he's a poor man's, Kant, but, and look, a lot of bad things were happening during this period in the Islamic world, so you can't just blame Ghazali for it. I mean, there was a lot of political upheaval during this period, a lot of fragmentation, a lot of fighting between different elements. There was always in the Islamic world an element of, call it extreme religiosity, a religiosity that wanted to, really wanted to crush these values that were coming in from Greece. That was always an element within. Also, it was being conquered by outside powers. The certain Turkish tribes came in even very early on, way before the Ottomans. And then the Mongols. The Mongols really did a piece of work on Central Asia and all the way to Iraq. So there were a lot of challenges to the golden age of Islam. Al-Ghazali was one of them. There was also a whole Sufi movement that rose up of Islamic mystics, which Al-Ghazali became a part of. So there were a lot of challenges. It's not, you can't lay it at the feet of just one man, although he was bad. Remo, what do you think the main reason behind the success of the Austrian school generally being very pro-capitalist? Is it the marginal revolution, or the role of the entrepreneur, or deduction? So my question is, what do you think the reason behind many Austrian economists being good in economics and generally being very pro-capitalist? Well, I mean, the reason for that is Menger. I mean, the founder of the Austrian school. He founded the Austrian school, and not all the Austrian economists are Austrians. It's not the geographic area. It's the founder, and then the people who leverage that founding. The marginal revolution can lead in various directions, as he did. Menger was just one of the people discovering marginal, kind of the marginal idea in economics. There were others who then led ultimately to the neoclassical tradition in economics. But Menger was very good. He was Aristotelian. He was an Aristotelian thinker. He was focused on reality. He spoke a lot about methodology and how to think about economics. And I think he just had a good methodology. He had good ideas. He was an individualist and an Aristotelian. And that set the movement, and then people who studied under him were influenced by his free market thinking and by his good methodology. And you had economists like von Boveck, who was a student of his. And then you got Mises, who was this genius who was a student of von Boveck. So it's the people who applied these ideas that started with Menger to questions, and they were very connected to reality, and they were free marketers. So what happened was, the whole system of Austrian economics is built on the principles of free markets. The marginal revolution can also be was applied by other people to justify state intervention, like, as it was in part of the neoclassical. So it's not the marginal revolution in and of itself, although it's really, really important. It's the way Menger understood it, and the way he understood the world around him, and then what he taught his students, and then what his students got out of it, and what they taught their students. It's an intellectual movement. Thank you, Remo. And then Remo says value for value. Thank you, with a little bit extra. Bonnie, thank you for the sticker. Really appreciate it. More people should do what Bonnie just did, $1 sticker, 99 cents. If enough of you do that, we make the target easy. All right, Roman, will Trump reinstate sanctions against Russia? Probably not. He'll want to keep oil prices low, and he's Putin's best bud. Why would he sanction Russia? But we'll see. I don't know. Not your average algorithm. Aren't graveyards an irrational waste of land? In a rational society, wouldn't everybody be cremated? I don't know. I mean, some families like to go to a grave site. It presents an opportunity to remember a particular person. It's a way to connect to their memory. So I don't know. I don't know if in a rational world there would be no graves, and we would commemorate the ashes in a urn on the windowsill. Maybe that's enough. I think it really depends on what people want, what people care about, and to what extent is the memory of the person who died important to them, and do they need a physical representation of it or not? Exit, thank you for the sticker. Harrison, thank you for the sticker. And Linda, thank you for the sticker. We're doing $99, $149, and $2. That's great. So, a bunch of stickers like that can make a huge difference. We don't have a lot of time. We're almost done. Run says, this is so depressing. He's talking about Trump. Yes, very, very depressing. But then it's Trump. So what else do you expect? Harrison, Anthropic is also trying to decode or read the internal activity of LLMs in real time. Look up sparse autoencoders and the Golden Gate neuron. All right, I'll look them up, but I'm not sure I understand even what that is. There's a lot of interesting things going on with AI. We'll be talking a lot more about it in the future. Timor, something like that. Thoughts on Haberman's New York Times Epstein file piece? I haven't seen that. I'll look for it. If I have anything interesting to say, I'll comment on it. Oh, this is about the panic in the White House. I didn't read it because, God, what's the point? I mean, I'd just be accused of more TDS. But it doesn't surprise me. The funny thing is that they were panicking about the release of the Epstein files because of its implications on Trump. And indeed, we haven't got all the files because Trump is mentioned in a lot of other files and so on. And there was a lot of panic. I don't think they needed to panic. The reality is nobody really cares. Because Trump, basically everybody knows he's a sleazebag, and nobody cares. So whatever Trump did, whatever's disclosed in those files that Trump did, his loyal following doesn't care. And most Americans don't like him anymore anyway. He's not that popular. So I don't think it's had an impact. It's more of an inside the Beltway thing, and more of a, yeah, the White House is afraid of bad press. But bad press doesn't affect Trump. The people who like him. That's it. They know how bad he is, and they still like him. Lone dissenter. First, the Council of Scholars approved candles, and now Bemotrizol, or whatever its name is. What wonders will they allow us next? You know, I don't know. Maybe that pill that you take and you live 100 years longer. It's possible. Maybe they'll allow us that. All right. Molten Splendor just came in with a $50 question. Thank you, Molten Splendor. Really, really appreciate that. So now we are only $70 away from our target, 70. So another $50 and a $20, and we're done. But this is the last question unless somebody comes in. Molten Splendor says, you mentioned that some of the Austrian economics were anarchists. Most of the modern Austrian economists are indeed anarchists. I am starting a Hazlitt book and wondering if I would run into these sentiments. If not Hazlitt, which ones fit this problem? No, Hazlitt is not an anarchist. Hazlitt is, it depends which book you're starting, but Economics in One Lesson is excellent. Hazlitt is, unfortunately, very conventional when it comes to morality and anything philosophical. Even though he knew Ayn Rand and read Ayn Rand's works, it never had an impact on him, which is too bad. But the reality is that the early Austrians were not anarchists. Mises was not an anarchist. Hazlitt was not. It's really the post-Rothbard. So Murray Rothbard, Hoppe, and pretty much almost all of the economists that call themselves Austrian today in academia are anarchists. Some of them make a big deal out of their anarchy. Some of them only make a little deal out of their anarchy, but all of them anarchists. All of them believe that anarchy is the ideal state, and it's what we should ultimately strive for. All the names they're not popping into my mind. But if you have questions about anybody specific, let me know. But pretty much you can count on pretty much any libertarian who post-Rothbard, that is modern libertarian today, who is an economist. You can count on them being an anarchist. Or anybody who calls himself an Austrian economist is likely to be an anarchist. And most libertarians. All right. But yeah, if you have specific questions, feel free to ask them. All right, everybody. Thank you to all the super chatters. I will see you guys tomorrow. Tomorrow's show is typically later, so probably 4 p.m., maybe 5. We'll see. But there will be a show tomorrow. It just will be later than usual because I teach. And let's see, what else? What else do we have? Yeah, no other announcements. I will see you all tomorrow. Have a great day.